I was recently listening to one of my favorite podcasts called Israel Story. If you spend enough time around me, I've probably talked about it. It's a loving ripoff of This American Life with Ira Glass. He even at the beginning did an episode with Ira Glass in which Ira Glass said, "You're ripping off my show." And this show, Israel Story, has done more to humanize the people and communities on both sides of the conflict than any other source for me over the past 2 years. Recently, they shared a story that truly took my breath away. Pazit, an Israeli mother of 4, grew up Orthodox near Tel Aviv. Zionist through and through. She married a man from Kiryat Arba, a settlement outside Hebron, surrounded by checkpoints and tension. Radwan, a Palestinian father of 6, grew up an observant Muslim in Lod, a mixed city of Jews and Arabs in Israel. He is a devout conservative man and has even made Hajj to Mecca. His eldest child, Bayan, was 8 when the doctors discovered her kidneys were failing. Her mother donated one of hers and saved her life for a while. Unfortunately, years later, the kidney began to fail again. Radwan wanted to donate, but he wasn't a match. His wife had already given. It was uncommon in the Muslim world to donate, and even less common for a Jew to donate to an Arab. There was no one left, and Radwan was feeling the weight of his child's sickness. One day he came to the Lod Water Company where he served on the board and carried a sadness too heavy to hide. Pazit, who worked there, asked him what was wrong, and he shared vulnerably about his beloved daughter. Pazit, barely waiting a second, responded simply, "I will donate my kidney to her." Radwan was so stunned that he started to cry immediately. And you can imagine from that moment, everything in Pazit's life changed. She had to schedule tests in Jerusalem and Ashdod and Tel Aviv and Petach Tikva. A summer of endless appointments passed, and Bayan was growing weaker by the day. The clock was ticking. And then October 7th. In Hamas's attack on Israel, 3 of Radwan's family members were murdered, some of the many Palestinian victims of October 7th. Pazit's husband, like many Israelis, was called up out of Simchat Torah to serve in Gaza, and the country just froze in trauma. Pazit's neighbors whispered, "Why give your kidney to them? What if a soldier needs it?" It was a delicate time, but Pazit pressed on, and finally the surgery was scheduled. The night before, they all sat together in the hospital cafe, her husband in uniform with a rifle, Radwan's wife and daughter in hijab. People stared. They had no idea what they were looking at. Outside, the war raged, but inside, 2 families sat together, waiting for a surgery that might save a teenage girl's life. The next day, Pazit went into surgery and woke up with 1 kidney. It was successfully transferred to Bayan, and as Pazit recovered, one of the Arab doctors in the hospital came to her room. "Did you know who you were giving the kidney to?" "Yes." "Did you know she's Arab?" "Yes." "So why?" She couldn't understand why a Jewish Israeli would help an Arab teenager. Then came a Jewish custodian who closed the door behind herself and looked at Pazit dead in the eye. "Can I tell you something?" "Okay. I wouldn't do it if I were you. All of them, they are Hamas. I'm telling you, all of them, they are Hamas." There are many reasons, understandable reasons, human reasons, for the Arab doctor and the Jewish custodian to both lack the empathy to understand why a Jewish Israeli woman would help the child of an Arab Israeli Muslim coworker. More important than those reasons that every single person sitting here could list is accepting that this black and white, us versus them behavior has become the norm of our world. We betray. We're cruel. We scheme. We're violent. We slander. We devise evil. We lie. We corrupt. We commit crimes. We're hostile. We're stubborn. We're immoral. We kill. We go astray. We lead others astray. The reason our tradition has us read Ashamnu is not to pound ourselves into self-pity or degrade our self-worth. The opposite. By acknowledging our wrongdoing, by acknowledging our human fallibility, by acknowledging the moments we don't live up to our own values, by acknowledging when our community and our country and our people don't live up to our standards, to God's standards, we draw a line in the sand and say, we erred, but it can be different. We can be different. There is another way. We aren't shaming the Arab doctor or the Jewish custodian or anyone here who relates to their emotions. But our tradition, our religion wants us to dream bigger than succumbing to our fears. It wants us to turn us back towards each other instead of turning us away. It wants us to build longer tables, not higher walls. Look what's possible when we overcome fear and give ourselves a chance to live out our values. We too can be like Pazit, realizing the Jewish values of pikuach nefesh, of saving a life, of being a rodef shalom, a pursuer of peace, of treating the ger, the other, the way we ourselves would want to be treated. Rabbi Donniel Hartman of the Shalom Hartman Institute writes in his essay, Morality in Times of Fear, that the core tenet of Judaism, the reason Judaism exists at all, is encouraging moral behavior, elevating ourselves above our animal instincts toward simple self-preservation, and instead connecting us to all of God's creation. Since its inception, Judaism has identified what is, I don't know if I said Hartman writes. Hartman writes that since its inception, Judaism has identified doing what is just and right as the foundation of our covenant with God and viewed moral behavior as its most important value. The prophet Micah tells us, "You have been told, O mortal, what is good and what God requires of you, only to do justice and to love goodness and to walk humbly with your God." In the Talmud, Hillel the elder consecrates this principle in his famous line, "What is hateful unto you, do not do to others." That is the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. Moral behavior, Hartman writes, is not merely central to Judaism. It's the whole thing, the whole Torah. When all is said and done, there is no validity to a Judaism that does not concern itself constantly with the question of how to act in a way that is just and right. When all is said and done, there is no validity to a Judaism that does not concern itself constantly with the question of how to act in a way that is just and right. There's an all too human temptation to decide in times of crisis, as we've been through in these past few years, that acting justly and compassionately are naive luxuries we can't afford. Our fear warps our sense of reality and tells us to put the prophet Micah and Rabbi Hillel on hold. Just protect our own until the world calms down, as if the world ever calms down. If we let fear erase our concern for others, if we let our grief blind our morality, if we stop concerning ourselves with the question of how to act in a way that is just and right, then we lose the very heart of Judaism. 30 years ago, on October 15th, 1995, I was 6. And on that day, 3 days before his birthday, Buma Inbar lost his son Yotam in Lebanon. He was killed. Buma Inbar's profound grief that he still can't talk about today without choking up didn't lead him to harden his heart and hate the other. Instead, meeting with bereaved Palestinian mothers broke him. All of a sudden, he encountered the pain that was so familiar at home in the pain of Palestinian parents who also lost their children. His grief led him to co-found Israeli-Palestinian Bereaved Families for Peace. It's Buma there on the right. Buma didn't let his trauma turn him inward. Remarkably, truly remarkably, it turned him towards others, toward building bridges. For many years now, he's helped Palestinians get medical care in Israel and provide them with supplies they needed during their treatments. In all the Middle East, he boasts, no country treats more Palestinian children than Israel. They are treated just like our own children here, no matter their gender, nationality, religion, or race. Since October 7th, however, very few Gazan patients have been granted permits to get treatment in Israel. And if they're lucky to be granted access, the patients and their families are mostly confined to the campus of the hospital, often for many, many months. The hospital, like any hospital, provides food for the patients, but the families can't go home and they can't leave the hospital grounds. So Buma brings it week after week, often twice a day. This cute old Jewish man hauls bags of groceries and prepared foods for the families of ill children to eat. As he said in a Hebrew language interview, Ani lo ish hadiborim, I'm not a man of words. Ani ish hamaasim, I'm a man of actions. Look what's possible when we overcome fear. We too can be like Buma, people of action, healing the world. And then there's Rachel Goldberg Poland. Many of you know her name. Her 23-year-old son, Hirsch, was taken hostage on October 7th, held captive for a year, and then brutally murdered. She wrote this poem as Hirsch was captive and still alive, but remarkably hasn't changed her tone since she buried her son. There's a lullaby that says your mother will cry 1,000 tears before you grow to be a man. I have cried 1,000,000 tears in the last 67 days. We all have. And I know that way over there's another woman who looks just like me because we're also very similar. And she's also been crying. All those tears, a sea of tears. They all taste the same. Can we take them, gather them up, remove the salt and pour them over our desert of despair and plant one tiny seed? A seed wrapped in fear, trauma, pain, war, and hope. And see what grows? Could it be that this woman so very like me that she and I could be sitting together in 50 years, laughing without teeth because we've drunk so much sweet tea together, and now we're so very old and our faces are creased like worn out paper bags, and our sons have their own grandchildren, and our sons have long lives, one of them without an arm, but who needs 2 arms anyway? Is it all a dream, a fantasy, a prophecy? One tiny seed. The generosity of Pazit, the dedication of Buma, the poem and spirit of Rachel might leave us wrestling, honestly, like that Arab doctor or the Jewish custodian, with how such things are possible. How people who have every reason to be cynical, every reason to be angry, every reason to wall themselves off and turn away from obligation, instead leaned in. How they reached their hand out across fear, across grief, and chose to concern themselves with what is just and what is right. They chose to do justice and to love goodness. to humbly walk with God. They chose to not do what is hateful unto others. They chose to plant tiny seeds of hope. The Hebrew word for seed, zera, is also used as the word for offspring. What we plant now is not only for ourselves, it is the world our children and grandchildren will inherit. The Talmud tells a famous story of Honi the Circle-Maker, who once saw a man planting a carob tree. When Honi asked, "Do you expect to live long enough to see its fruit?" the man replied, "I found a world full of carob trees. Just as my ancestors planted for me, so I am planting for my descendants." That is our charge for 5786. In moments of cynicism, of doubt, of siloing ourselves in, to instead plant a tiny seed. To plant not only for ourselves, but for all of God's creatures, and most importantly, for those who come after us. To plant seeds of peace, of love, and of justice. To plant even when the ground feels hard, even when the conditions tell us to wait, even when our eyes are blurred with tears from all the seeds that never grew. Though we have sown with so many tears over the past 2 years, we cannot give up hope that our children and our children's children will reap those tiny seeds of love and justice and peace that we planted for them in joy. To a year of blossoming hope. Kamar Khatima Tova.
Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will